Recently, two authors published why I or why we articles on law.com that on their face seem to have nothing in common. One was a solo attorney explaining why she took her practice that she built over 20 years or so and joined a large firm. The other was a non-lawyer CEO explaining why his company became one of the first alternative business structures in his state. Two different authors talking about two different topics to two different audiences, and really giving two different reasons for telling their stories. But both authors employed three techniques to make their explanations for why they did what they did credible. Techniques that are often lacking in these kinds of articles. You've surely seen why we thought leadership articles before. In these articles, the authors are explaining why they or their organizations did something. These articles are a great way to win hearts and minds by explaining the logical and the emotional reasons for doing something noteworthy. The typical advice you would get for writing one of these articles is that you should tell your story. You should share your values. You should be authentic. You should explain your mission. So people write about their mission, they tack it on to a description of what they did and why they did it, and they call it a day. When they do that, their article is going to read like a press release because that's pretty much what it is. The article will almost certainly be all sunshine and rainbows about why the author or authors did what they did. That's just like how a press release only talks about the good things and the benefits of whatever the press release is announcing. But people aren't dumb. Nobody believes that taking the kind of action that lends itself to writing a why we or why I article about it is going to come without any issues. Not when making a career change, not when designing a new business or launching a new business, not when doing anything. That's why these three techniques are so important. They help give credibility to articles that can very easily lose all credibility. The first technique that both articles employed was that they discussed tension. Specifically, in these articles, the price that the authors had to pay for making the moves that they did. The sole attorney didn't just say she joined a bigger firm, she said she was terrified that the firm's brand would swallow the reputation that she'd spent decades building, and she said that a previous or a different firm that tried to recruit her told her a lawyer's name doesn't matter and that all that matters is a firm's brand. And she recounted loving being her own boss and how she had to give that up on purpose in order to join the larger law firm and gain the benefits of joining that firm. The CEO didn't just say that his business structure was better. He granted that lawyers are right to be suspicious of companies that have a startup mindset in the legal industry. He granted that not every firm should be structured the way that his firm was, that not every legal matter could be standardized, and that not everything about representing a client should or can be automated. Both of them made concessions, and the concessions are what make their articles credible. Before you write one of these why we articles, you should answer one question. What were the costs of doing what I did? Or, in other words, what did you give up? The lateral attorney gave up autonomy that she treasured. The CEO needed to give engineers real equity in the business, and a conventional law firm structure wouldn't have allowed him to do that. If you can't answer what did I or what did we sacrifice, what costs did we incur, what costs did we pay, you don't have a credible why. You have a what, and a what is a press release. The second technique that both authors employed was that they explained objections, questions, and doubts a reader would likely have. They took them on, head on. In the attorney's article, she quotes a peer who asked her, why would you ever want to practice at that law firm? The attorney didn't soften it, she didn't rebut it in a footnote. She put the hostile question in the reader's ear and in front of them very early on, and then spent her article answering that question. The CEO did something similar in his article. He said he recognized that lawyers and the legal industry has skepticism toward applying a startup mindset to law, and that startups often treat legal requirements as an obstacle to work around rather than a factor to build into their operations. But then he explained how his company avoided that outcome. This technique of calling out objections and answering them early on builds credibility because your reader is almost certainly thinking about those objections, if not early on, then as they go down and through your article. If you don't call out in your article these objections and answer them, your readers are going to spend the entire piece waiting for you to do so. When you don't, they're going to see you as dodging those objections, and they're going to see you as less credible regarding the topic that you are covering. When you call out these objections, you're signaling to your readers that you know people might have questions or objections, you've thought about them already, and here's how you would answer them. The third technique that both employed was setting the scenes. The attorney described standing in her new firm and watching another lawyer finish a client meeting, filling out a drop-down form, hitting send, and then all of a sudden, work started getting done. Work that would have taken her dozens of emails to get started. She could have written that the firm had excellent infrastructure, but she didn't. That wouldn't have been vivid, that wouldn't have been persuasive. Instead, she painted a picture in the reader's mind of one of the reasons why she decided to take her practice to this firm. In another part of the article, she recounts a friend asking her, what freedom do you actually have as a solo practitioner if you're on a family vacation and a client can interrupt it? That exchange catapulted her into reevaluating her life as a solo attorney and eventually joining this firm. The CEO, in his article, recounted how his company considered focusing on certain target clients, but ran into a structural problem and then what they did to get around that problem. Neither author was discussing cold, heartless statistics or copy and pasted value statements. They were setting scenes, which builds credibility by establishing the humanity of the decision making and the action taking as described in these why I, why we articles. Two important red flags to be aware of and avoid in these types of why we, why I articles. First, not all why I and why we articles are the same. This is where people get things wrong. Why I articles are singularly focused. Somebody's talking about their life or their career. It's fueled by vulnerability. In the article written by the attorney, she's telling the reader about her fears, about sleepless nights, about following her father into a law office. She ends by offering to talk to any solo who's wrestling with the same decision, the same concerns that she wrestled with and that she had. But why we is institutional. It's more focused on accountability. The CEO in his article discloses really nothing of a personal nature. Instead, he's offering a standard that he's inviting readers hold him to, treating expanded permission as expanded obligation. So these are two different levers, vulnerability and accountability. A common failure when crafting these thought leadership articles is for a company to go after vulnerability, but it hasn't earned that vulnerability. An institution's talking about its journey and its heart, but institutions don't have hearts, they have obligations. So when writing a why we article, authors from organizations should name the obligation that they're accountable for satisfying, focus on that obligation, and stay away from talking about vulnerability and other emotions that organizations don't have. Second red flag is that why we articles are naturally self-serving. The attorney's article that I was describing is basically a recruiting document aimed for solos who are in her similar boat, who might find her new law firm an appealing place to practice the law. The CEO's piece is obviously trying to build legitimacy for a controversial form of law firm ownership, alternative business structures, and a hiring pitch to engineers to join his company. Nobody publishes a why I joined a bigger firm and regretted it article. Nobody's publishing articles talking about the evil reasons for why they launched a company. But readers aren't dumb. They understand that. They're not naive. But if the writer of a why we article can establish credibility by discussing the price they paid, anticipating objections, and setting scenes, readers will still see the self-interest in these articles, but they'll discount it because there's credibility being built by the author by employing those three techniques. Why we thought leadership articles are a genre that appeals to the hearts and minds of readers. They can be effective, but if authors aren't careful, their articles can become about as credible as a press release. To avoid that fate, when you write a why we or why I article, discuss the price that you and or your organization paid, anticipate objections, and set scenes. If you'd like to learn more best practices for crafting thought leadership, check out lawfirmeditorialservice.com. We have more than 500 videos, blog posts, and podcast episodes that can help you do just that.